Good evening and welcome back to Prime of Midlife. It is Tuesday evening, we've made it through another day, and this evening we are talking about changes. And the changes I'm talking about are just to our daily lives, and they seem to have been little changes, but they're turning into things that are actually having quite a significant effect on us. One of them, obviously, is time. I have noticed recently just how much of my time is spent not on things for me or not on things that I choose to do, but things that I have to do. Things like calling through to speak to the council, calling through to speak to your insurance company, your TV company, your electricity company, calling through to get these things, unless it's an emergency, it's a call centre. And years ago, I seem to remember that they would have local offices, based on where you stayed. For us, like there would be a local office in Perth, a local office in Stirling, parts of Glasgow, Dundee would have its own office, Arbroath, etc. Um, and you would phone through and there would be someone on the switchboard and they would put you through to whoever you needed to speak to. Now, what's happened is all these small offices have closed. Not all at once, but they've all closed now. And it's amalgamated into a big call centre, which has got less staff than the small offices would have had if you put them together. And they literally just sit and take call after call after call. And they have a script to follow, and there's only so much they can do. So there's less people per call now, because obviously there's so many more people now than there was when I was a kid. And it gets that you're on the phone for half an hour, 20 minutes, an hour and a half. And it gets to like your number 8 in the queue, and you don't want to hang up because you're so close to getting answered, but you've been on the phone for over an hour already. You've got things to do. That, I think, is something that has permeated our daily lives and taking time away from us to do something that someone else needs us to do because of where they have cut costs or where they have made changes. Other things like your local post offices. Most of them are closed now, the smaller ones. Now, I went up the shop today to go and get some bits. Trust me, I was getting like 2 or 3 bits. Um, went up to the shop and there was a guy in front of me. Now, good on him. I'm presuming from what he was doing, he's either a seller or a maker or something doing his own stuff. But he had like 6 packages to get sent. Now, this was my local Spar, which is obviously a collection and pickup point for a delivery place. I wanted like 3 things. I stood there for over 5 minutes while one member of staff dealt with all these packages. Thankfully, another member of staff came out, but I'm presuming he was actually on his dinner break just because of the time it was. But that took so that's another 5 minutes I'm standing there going, why? Whereas if there was a dedicated area for that or a dedicated person, we wouldn't have to be waiting. Now, I know that's a tiny, tiny little wait, but you start adding that up throughout the day for how many people are having to wait for how long, and it starts adding up. Yesterday, I had to go drive out for work and go and drop some stuff off at the guys. So off I jolly well trotted, drove like 40 odd miles. It was an emergency. I had to take stuff to them. So drove 30 odd miles, met them at an Asda's because I was like, right, okay, that's easy for everybody to find. It's not that far off the motorway. It's just like under the motorway and it's there. So off I jolly well trotted. The Asda was huge and I was like, oh, I'm going to go and see what's reduced. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning by the time I got there. Trust me, they had very little there. So I thought, right, and I had a packet of peas in the pod. I love peas in the pod. However, my stomach does not agree with them because I will eat like 3 packets at once. I will literally just sit in the office and eat them. And after a couple of times when I have literally been writhing about in pain with my stomach, Patrick reminded me that I had eaten plenty peas in the pod. So I have to be careful. But there was one pack and it was reduced. So I thought, right, I'm just going to take that. I'll take it with me in the car and I'll jump back up the road. Went to the tills. There was a queue of about 6 people at the manned till. I'm obviously on work time at the moment. So I was like, right, I just going to have to do the self-service. I had a £5 in my pocket and I was like, right, we'll go to this one that accepts cards and cash. Wouldn't accept my £5. 4 times I tried it. 4 times it didn't accept. The staff members were helping other people, so I literally just put the peas down and went, your machine won't accept my cash, and walked out. Not liking that machine won't accept my cash. That's definitely not a good thing. So, yeah, that was a waste of my time, but it also was very difficult to use cash. So there's all these things coming together. And there's also in the headlines recently, and also a couple of people I've spoken to at work who are nothing to do with work, it's just customers that I've spoken to. Seemingly unemployment is starting to rise. There's less jobs going about. Recruitment agencies haven't got as many jobs going, etc., etc. And I was like, right, okay. But seemingly food inflation is coming down, so that's a good thing. Doesn't particularly help if you don't have a job, granted, but seemingly it's coming down, so that's a good thing. But mortgage rates, they say, are going to stay high till at least 2026. Food prices are supposed to be coming down in the supermarket. So I was reading all these headlines and I was like, and how's that going to affect us? And then I read another thing that somebody had put down saying they started a job pre-pandemic. It was a virtual job. So they had moved before COVID had even hit, so this was prior to that. They got a virtual job. And seemingly now they've said, oh, you need to come back to the office. If you don't, your employment will be terminated. And he's like, no, I will take that as constructive dismissal because you are changing my contract without asking. So obviously, as I'm sure you've seen in the news, there's this thing about everyone should get back into the offices. Now that's because, as far as I'm concerned, my opinion only, that's because there's so many companies have bought city centre offices, properties, etc. to rent out, and they were making a fortune. You know, that was their investment plan. And then, of course, the offices are sitting empty, and they're now going to their shareholders going, you know, we can't make money out of this, there's nobody there. You know yourself, shareholders have portfolios. I'm quite sure there's some of them have gone to the companies that they're in charge of or directors of saying, get them back to work, start renting out offices again. Your supermarkets, there's just so much profiteering going on, it's ridiculous. But the question that is in my head is, what happens if they just don't bring the prices down or they don't pay the farmers? How much of our food supply does the supermarket control? If we lose supermarkets, what happens? Where do we get our food? Something to think of. Because as well, you know, with the time thing, going to the supermarket is quite time consuming. However, the online delivery has been a great thing for people like me who are rural. That saves me about 3 hours in a day instead of having to go through, do the shopping, etc. So I get an online shop if it's stuff that I just know. Obviously, some days I go and try and pick up the reduced items, but if it's things that I'm going to absolutely need, then I will do an online shop and that saves me. But to summarise, now that I've been wittering, apologies, there are a lot of things that are taking a lot of our time. And that's time that we could spend making things easier for ourselves, preparing for when things are more difficult. Whether it's batch cooking, stocking up your pantry, whether it's getting your gardening skills upgraded, anything like that. Why is it now that our time seems to be a commodity that we are giving away for free to enable companies to boost their profits by employing less people? Good question, I think. Catch you later.